In the recent years I've approached the paper version of the D&D 5 edition, and I have been both a player and a master. And all in all I can say that I have gained some experience of the game mechanics. And in this video I would like to talk about what I think are the issues with the current version of Baldur's Gate, and I think some of my topics have not been given the proper attention. So let's start with the first problem in my opinion, and that is the stealth action. This action needs only a bonus action, but this is not the problem. The problem is that in the current version of the game, it is enough to be out of sight of the enemy to successfully hide. So you really just need to move around your enemy, and this creates two problems. In this way the action is extremely effective. Attacking from hidden grants advantage to the hit, and it has an approximate mathematical advantage of a +3. And this eases the player to exploit this action as much as possible. The values of this action often override the use of the spells, such as Bless or any other action that gives advantage to it. And the paper version does not have this problem, because it is the master who decides whether the action is feasible or not. Furthermore, it must be considered that the passive perception of the enemy is always active, especially during a fight. But let's say that a master gives the possibility to a player to hide in the middle of the game. The player still need to roll the dice, with disadvantage most likely. Another problem with the stealth is that, as of now, except I'm wrong, I've never seen any enemy try to hide using this action during a fight. Imagine engaging with a group of thieves at Baldur's Gate in midnight. In my opinion, it would be rather strange to see them front-loading my party as if they were a group of raging barbarians. But I'm not just here to expose what in my opinion are the issues. I'd also like to propose some easy solution, if I can propose it naturally. In my opinion, in the first case it is enough to give an alert circle of more or less 9 meters around the enemy during the fight, preventing, for example, your paladin to hide 2 inches away from your enemy and strike with advantage. For the second part, however, the problem is more complex. In fact, offering enemy the opportunity to hide would mean extending the fights that already tend to be a bit long. For personal taste, I am willing to have this choice, even at the cost of having a longer fight, but I can understand those who think otherwise. The second problem is all about the jumping action. In D&D 5 edition there are two types of jumps. One that is part of movement, and the other one that is part of an ability check. For example, jumping off a cliff or jumping or try to jump during a fight. But in D&D 5 edition, the first type of jump is part of the movement action, and you don't add meters in base of your strength. And also there is a difference between a jump from a standstill position that make you jump half the distance, or a jump after a small sprint. This small difference creates two big problems. The first is that it makes the action very effective, so much that often to get close to an enemy, the jump bonus action is used, transforming the battlefield into a long jump race. The second is that makes most of the control spells way less effective. In the basic version of the game, throwing a fireball or casting plant grown isn't always an obvious answer. In this case, in my opinion, it is enough to simply follow the paper version, or at least eliminate the additional meter of the jump. And in this way, we will be forced to use more often the dash action, and we will stop seeing people jumping around. The third problem has to do with the reaction system. Personally, I'm not worried. In fact, the patch 9 version is not the final version. And in this regard, Larian Studio was quite clear. But for completeness, the only thing I think is missing is the ability to prepare an action. This option also opens up many possibilities. For example, if we find ourselves at the top of an ladder and we want to push down the enemy as soon as he gets to us, in Baldur's Gate we are forced to skip the turn and wait for the enemy to reach us. But with the paper version of the reactions system, it will be sufficient to prepare the push action as soon as possible, so we will not waste our turn. And as soon as the enemy is engaging with us, we can use our reaction to push them. And I really hope they put it in the game, because in this way the gameplay will gain a lot of depth. Fourth problem concerns the scrolls and the creation of the scrolls. Currently, it will not make sense to compare the effectiveness of a Battlemaster warrior to a mystical warrior. There is a too great difference in resources and effectiveness that makes the first clearly superior to the other. Point is that in the basic version of the game, you can, if the spell is on your class spell list, read the scroll and cast it. So you can literally cast Wall of Force a level 5 spell when you are level 3. In this way, many of the half-casters become much less restrictive, making them a viable and more strong and enjoyable choice. Not to mention that the idea of sending my warrior to the street of the city in search of an alchemist for the ingredient of my scrolls sounds funny. But you need to remember that if the spell is on your class spell list, but of a higher level than you can normally cast, you must make an ability check using your spellcasting ability. So please, Larian, let us craft our scrolls. The fifth problem is related to the fly spells. Currently the spell looks more like a sort of a long jump, and really you have only few advantage. For example, you don't have to move in a straight line, you don't take as sporadic and often trivial damage of terrain. Also, you have to consider that with the jump spell, you would travel long distance compared to fly spells. But let's talk about the big difference in the paper version and in Baldur's Gate. In fact, paper version, the character can literally fly and remain several meters above Earth, making him completely unreachable by melee opponents, and that opens up a myriad of possibilities that would make the gameplay much deeper. But unfortunately, I feel like that we will not see this in the final version of the game, because it would be a big loss. Yes, it would be a big loss, but I think that giving this possibility to the player is very difficult to manage. The last point is about mounts. I'm ready to put my hand on the fire that we won't see them. In fact, that there is a lot of work to be done, including animating and much more. But you can say that Gith used red dragons as a mount, which would suggest a certain type of attention to the thing. But in this case, as in that of Fly Magic, advice other than the hard work of the developers. And with that, I pretty much said it all. Yes, I could talk a little bit about the inventory system, that in my opinion is a mess, but if you think I'm wrong, or if you think there's more to add, write in the comment, and thank you for your attention.